The Path of Awakening. In a remote and uncharted land, nestled between mist-shrouded mountains and ancient forests, lived Ethan, a young man whose life had become a labyrinth of unanswered questions. At 28, he found himself standing at the crossroads of existence, his heart heavy with the weight of modern disillusionment. The bustling city where he had spent most of his life, with its neon lights and ceaseless noise, had gradually transformed from a place of opportunity into a prison of empty pursuits. Each day seemed to blur into the next, filled with mechanical routines that left him feeling increasingly hollow. Ethan's journey toward seeking truth began not with a dramatic revelation, but rather with a series of subtle yet persistent awakenings. It started during his daily commute through the concrete jungle, where he would observe people moving like automatons, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of smartphones. He noticed how conversations had become transactional, relationships reduced to social media interactions, and success measured solely by material accumulation. The more he observed, the more he felt an inexplicable disconnect between what society promised and what it delivered. His initial attempts to find meaning took various forms, from weekend meditation workshops to self-help books that promised instant enlightenment. Yet each path led only to temporary satisfaction, leaving him thirstier for something more substantial. During one particularly restless night, while browsing through an old bookstore, his fingers brushed against a weathered volume titled The Ancient Path. The book spoke of a timeless teaching known as the Noble Eightfold Path. Right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These words resonated deeply within him, like distant echoes of a forgotten melody. As weeks turned into months, Ethan's fascination with these teachings grew stronger. He began noticing how the principles of the Eightfold Path intertwined seamlessly with everyday life, offering practical wisdom rather than abstract philosophy. His morning coffee breaks became moments of reflection on right understanding, while his evening walks transformed into practices of right mindfulness. The more he explored these concepts, the clearer it became that true fulfillment couldn't be found in external achievements or fleeting pleasures, but rather in aligning one's life with deeper truths. This growing awareness created an internal tension that eventually became unbearable. On a crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves danced around him, Ethan made a decision that would alter the course of his life. He realized that understanding these teachings intellectually was insufficient. He needed to experience them fully, to walk the path himself. With nothing but a backpack containing basic necessities and that worn-out book, he set out from the city, leaving behind the familiar comforts of his former life. His destination was unknown, guided only by an inner compass pointing toward truth and awakening. The journey ahead promised uncertainty and challenges, but Ethan felt a profound sense of peace about his decision. For the first time in years, he was moving towards something rather than running away from dissatisfaction. The road stretched before him like an unwritten story, and he was ready to fill its pages with experiences that would transform not just his understanding, but his very being. The first steps: seeking wisdom. Beyond the known, Ethan's departure from the city marked the beginning of a physical and spiritual odyssey that would test every fiber of his being. As he ventured beyond the urban sprawl, the landscape transformed dramatically. From orderly streets to winding forest paths, from concrete structures to ancient stone formations that seemed to whisper secrets of ages past. The air grew crisper, carrying with it the earthy scent of moss and the distant murmur of mountain streams. Each step forward felt like shedding another layer of his old identity, yet the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily upon his shoulders. During the initial days of his journey, Ethan encountered numerous challenges that tested his resolve. The physical demands of traversing rugged terrain proved more taxing than he had anticipated. His feet blistered from walking on unfamiliar paths, and nights spent under the open sky revealed just how vulnerable he was to nature's elements. Hunger pangs often struck when food supplies ran low, forcing him to forage for wild berries and edible plants. a skill he had read about but never practiced. These hardships, however, were mere preludes to the deeper struggles that awaited him. The psychological toll of solitude manifested in unexpected ways. Without the constant distraction of technology or human interaction, Ethan found himself confronting thoughts and emotions he had long suppressed. Memories of past failures resurfaced with startling clarity, while doubts about his chosen path whispered incessantly in his mind. There were moments when the comfort of his old life seemed overwhelmingly appealing, tempting him to turn back. Yet, each time these thoughts threatened to overwhelm him, he would recall the words from the ancient path, particularly the teachings of right effort and right mindfulness, which urged him to acknowledge these challenges without judgment, treating them as natural parts of the journey. Nature itself became both adversary and ally in Ethan's quest. Violent storms forced him to seek shelter in caves, where he discovered ancient carvings depicting figures in meditation. These images served as powerful reminders that others had walked similar paths before him, facing their own trials in pursuit of higher understanding. The changing seasons taught him patience and acceptance, as he learned to adapt to both scorching heat and freezing cold. Most profoundly, the rhythm of nature's cycles mirrored the teachings of impermanence, reinforcing his understanding of right view, that all things are transient and interconnected. One particularly transformative experience occurred during a treacherous mountain crossing. Exhausted and disoriented, Ethan found himself caught in a sudden blizzard. As visibility dropped to near zero and the temperature plummeted, panic threatened to consume him. In that moment of crisis, he remembered the principle of right concentration. Instead of succumbing to fear, he focused all his attention on each deliberate step, breathing deeply and maintaining awareness of his surroundings. This intense presence of mind not only helped him navigate safely to shelter, but also provided a profound insight. True strength lies not in conquering external obstacles, but in mastering one's internal responses to them. Throughout these early stages of his journey, Ethan began to notice subtle shifts in his perception. The constant mental chatter that once dominated his consciousness started to quiet down, replaced by a heightened awareness of the present moment. Simple acts, drinking water from a mountain stream, watching sunlight filter through tree branches, feeling the texture of moss beneath his fingers, became sources of deep appreciation and wonder. These experiences aligned perfectly with the teachings of right mindfulness, demonstrating that enlightenment wasn't some distant goal, but rather a way of being fully present in each moment. Perhaps the most significant challenge came not from external circumstances, but from within. As Ethan progressed along the path, he encountered communities of seekers and practitioners who shared their own interpretations of the Eightfold Path. Some advocated strict ascetic practices, while others emphasized intellectual study over direct experience. These encounters forced him to confront his own biases and attachments, to question whether he was truly seeking truth or merely collecting different perspectives to validate his existing beliefs. Through these interactions, he began to understand right thought, not as adherence to specific doctrines, but as the cultivation of wisdom that transcends dogma. Each difficulty overcome, each lesson learned, brought Ethan closer to grasping the essence of the path he had chosen. The physical journey through untamed wilderness paralleled his inner transformation, as he shed layers of conditioned thinking and opened himself to deeper truths. The road ahead remained uncertain, but with each step, his faith in the journey grew stronger. What had begun as a search for answers was evolving into something far more profound, a process of becoming that transcended his original expectations. The meeting of minds, encounters that illuminate the path. As Ethan's journey continued, he found himself drawn to places where ancient wisdom still lingered in the air. Secluded monasteries perched on cliff edges, hidden temples nestled in bamboo groves, and humble hermitages carved into mountainsides. It was during one such visit to a remote mountain retreat that he encountered Master Ananda, a venerable teacher whose eyes seemed to hold the depth of countless lifetimes. Their meeting occurred quite unexpectedly as Ethan stumbled upon the master tending to a garden of medicinal herbs. his movements so deliberate and mindful that they appeared almost ritualistic. Master Ananda's approach to teaching was unlike anything Ethan had experienced before. Rather than delivering formal lectures or philosophical discourses, the master employed simple, everyday activities as vehicles for profound insights. One afternoon, as they worked together planting rice seedlings in the terraced fields, Master Ananda explained the concept of right livelihood through the careful nurturing of each plant. Just as these seedlings require proper conditions to grow, he said, his hands moving with practiced grace, our actions must create conditions that support life rather than harm it. True livelihood is not merely about earning sustenance, but cultivating harmony with all beings. Through these practical demonstrations, Ethan began to understand how the Eightfold Path could be integrated into every aspect of life. During their morning tea ceremonies, Master Ananda illustrated right speech by showing how silence could sometimes communicate more effectively than words. He demonstrated how the quality of attention given to pouring tea, the timing of each sip, and the space between conversations could foster deeper connections than any amount of verbal exchange. These lessons weren't confined to formal settings. Even casual walks through the forest became opportunities for learning about right effort, as they observed how nature maintained balance through continuous, moderate action rather than extreme measures. The impact of these teachings extended far beyond intellectual understanding. Under Master Ananda's guidance, Ethan experienced profound shifts in his perception and behavior. One particularly transformative period involved practicing right concentration through traditional meditation techniques. Each morning before dawn, they would sit facing the rising sun, focusing on the breath while allowing thoughts to pass like clouds across the sky. At first, Ethan struggled with restlessness and frustration, but gradually, he learned to maintain awareness without attachment. This practice revealed to him how concentration wasn't about forcing the mind into stillness, but rather creating space for clarity to emerge naturally. Their relationship evolved beyond that of teacher and student, becoming a partnership in mutual exploration. Master Ananda often shared stories of his own struggles and breakthroughs, emphasizing that enlightenment wasn't a final destination, but an ongoing process of refinement. Through these personal accounts, Ethan learned valuable lessons about perseverance and humility. He discovered that setbacks and doubts were integral parts of the path, serving as catalysts for deeper understanding rather than signs of failure. Perhaps the most significant influence Master Ananda had on Ethan was in helping him develop right understanding. Through countless discussions held during moonlit evenings, they explored the nature of reality, suffering, and liberation. Master Ananda encouraged Ethan to question everything, including the teachings themselves, fostering a spirit of inquiry that prevented dogmatic thinking. This approach led Ethan to realize that true understanding wasn't about accumulating knowledge, but about transforming one's relationship with experience itself. As their time together drew to a close, Master Ananda presented Ethan with a small weathered notebook. "These are not answers," he explained, "but questions that have guided my own journey. Let them serve as companions on your path." The notebook contains simple yet profound inquiries. What does this moment teach me about impermanence? How can I respond to difficulty with compassion rather than resistance? Where am I holding on to views that limit my understanding? These questions became touchstones for Ethan's continued practice, reminding him that the path of awakening was one of perpetual discovery. Their parting was bittersweet, filled with gratitude and the understanding that their connection transcended physical proximity. Master Ananda's final words echoed in Ethan's mind long after their separation. "Remember, the path doesn't end here. Each encounter, each experience, each breath is an opportunity to deepen your practice. Carry the teachings not as burdens, but as seeds to be planted wherever you go." This farewell marked not an ending, but a transition, as Ethan prepared to continue his journey with renewed purpose and deeper understanding of the Eightfold Path's practical applications in daily life. The trials of truth, confronting inner shadows. As Ethan descended from the mountain retreat, carrying Master Ananda's teachings like embers glowing in his heart, he encountered a series of trials that would test the very foundation of his spiritual progress. The first major challenge arose during his passage through the Valley of Echoes, a place where sound traveled strangely, amplifying voices and distorting perceptions. Here, he met Sarah, a fellow traveler whose journey mirrored his own in unsettling ways. Their initial conversations flowed easily, sharing experiences and insights gained along their respective paths. However, as they spent more time together, Ethan began to notice disturbing patterns emerging in their interactions. Sarah possessed an uncanny ability to reflect Ethan's own doubts and fears back at him, often phrasing them in ways that triggered deep insecurities. During one particularly intense discussion about right speech, she pointedly asked, "How can you claim to practice mindful communication when your words often carry hidden judgments? Isn't that just another form of violence?" Her observation struck a nerve, forcing Ethan to confront how his attempts at constructive criticism sometimes masked underlying impatience and superiority. This realization aligned with the teaching of right understanding, revealing how his ego still clung to positions of authority and control, even while pursuing spiritual growth. The valley's peculiar acoustics seemed to amplify these internal conflicts, making every thought and emotion resonate with uncomfortable clarity. Ethan found himself struggling with right effort as he oscillated between periods of intense self-criticism and equally powerful defenses of his current practices. The teachings of right concentration became crucial during these times, helping him maintain focus on the present moment rather than getting lost in cycles of doubt and justification. He learned to observe his reactions without immediate response, creating space for genuine understanding to emerge rather than reflexive defense. A more profound trial emerged when Ethan reached the Forest of Forgotten Paths, where ancient trails crisscrossed in bewildering patterns. Here, he encountered James, a former monk who had abandoned his vows after years of practice. Their meeting occurred at twilight, as shadows lengthened and the forest seemed to breathe with its own mysterious life. James shared his story with brutal honesty, how years of disciplined practice had led not to enlightenment, but to increasing disillusionment. "I followed all the rules," he confessed, "practiced diligently, but somewhere along the way, the path became more important than the destination. I lost sight of why I started in the first place." This encounter forced Ethan to examine his own motivations and attachments. Were his practices becoming ends in themselves rather than means to deeper understanding? The teachings of right thought suddenly took on new urgency, challenging him to distinguish between genuine spiritual aspiration and the subtle pride that could creep into diligent practice. He realized how easily the pursuit of enlightenment could become another form of craving, another way for the ego to assert itself through achievement. The most harrowing trial came during his passage through the desert of reflection, where mirages danced on the horizon and the relentless sun exposed every weakness. Here, Ethan faced his greatest fear, the possibility that his entire journey might be misguided, that perhaps no ultimate truth existed to be found. Days passed without water or shade, and with each step, his doubts grew louder. Was he merely chasing illusions, constructing elaborate philosophies to mask fundamental emptiness? The teachings of right view, which had seemed so clear in cooler climates, now felt like fragile constructs threatening to collapse under the weight of existential uncertainty. Yet it was precisely in this state of extreme vulnerability that Ethan experienced a breakthrough. Stripped of all external supports and internal certainties, he found himself simply being, neither seeking nor rejecting, neither hoping nor despairing. This state of pure presence revealed the essential paradox of the path, that true understanding emerges not through accumulating knowledge or perfecting practices, but through surrendering to the mystery of existence itself. The teachings of right mindfulness took on new meaning as he realized that awareness wasn't about controlling experience, but about opening completely to whatever arises. These trials, though painful and disorienting, ultimately strengthened Ethan's practice in unexpected ways. They taught him that the path of awakening isn't about eliminating difficulties, but about transforming one's relationship with them. Each challenge became an opportunity to apply the Eightfold Path in real time, testing theoretical understanding against the raw material of lived experience. The teachings of right action revealed themselves in how he responded to adversity, not through avoidance or aggression, but through compassionate engagement with whatever arose. As he emerged from these trials, Ethan carried with him not answers, but deeper questions. Not certainty, but greater openness to uncertainty. He understood now that the path wasn't linear, that progress often looked like regression, and that true growth frequently felt like falling apart. These insights didn't diminish his commitment to the journey, but deepened it, transforming his practice from a pursuit of goals into an embrace of the unfolding mystery of existence itself. The dawning realization, embracing interconnected truth. As Ethan emerged from the desert of reflection, his perception of reality underwent a profound transformation that fundamentally altered his understanding of the Eightfold Path. The harsh lessons of the desert had stripped away his conceptual frameworks, leaving him raw and open to a deeper truth that transcended intellectual comprehension. During one particularly still morning, as he watched the sunrise paint the horizon in hues of gold and crimson, something shifted within him. The boundaries between observer and observed dissolved, revealing a profound interconnectedness that permeated all existence. This wasn't merely an intellectual understanding of interdependence, but a visceral experience of being an integral thread in the vast tapestry of life. This awakening brought a radical reinterpretation of the Eightfold Path's components. Right understanding transformed from a cognitive grasp of Buddhist principles into a direct knowing of reality's nature. Ethan realized that wisdom wasn't about accumulating knowledge, but about recognizing the inherent perfection of each moment, exactly as it was. Right thought ceased to be about monitoring and correcting mental activity. Instead, it became the natural expression of a mind that had stopped dividing experience into desirable and undesirable. Thoughts arose and passed like clouds, neither grasped nor rejected, simply witnessed with compassionate awareness. The practice of right speech took on new dimensions as Ethan recognized how words shaped reality, not just through their content, but through the energy behind them. He saw how authentic communication emerged from deep listening rather than clever articulation, how silence could speak volumes when rooted in genuine presence. Right action revealed itself as spontaneous expressions of wisdom and compassion, no longer requiring conscious deliberation or moral calculation. The distinction between doer and deed faded, leaving only appropriate responses to each situation's unique demands. Most significantly, Ethan's understanding of right mindfulness and right concentration merged into a unified field of awareness that embraced both stillness and activity. He discovered that mindfulness wasn't about maintaining constant attention, but about trusting awareness's natural capacity to encompass all experience. Concentration revealed itself as the natural gathering of attention when genuine interest arose, rather than a forced narrowing of focus. These insights didn't negate the traditional practices, but revealed them as skillful means leading to a deeper, more integrated understanding. The implications of this awakened perspective extended far beyond personal practice. Ethan recognized how the illusion of separation underpinned much of human suffering, how the belief in independent selves created endless cycles of craving and aversion. He saw how social systems, economic structures, and environmental degradation all stemmed from this fundamental misperception. The path of awakening wasn't just about individual liberation, but about contributing to collective healing. Each act of kindness, each moment of presence, each expression of wisdom rippled outward, touching lives in ways impossible to measure or control. This understanding brought a profound sense of responsibility, coupled with complete freedom from results. Ethan realized that true service wasn't about achieving specific outcomes, but about embodying awakened qualities in every moment. Whether sharing meals with strangers, helping injured animals, or simply sitting quietly under trees, each action became an expression of interconnected being. The distinction between practice and daily life disappeared, leaving only the seamless flow of responsive awareness. As he continued his journey, Ethan noticed how his presence affected those around him. People seemed to open up in his company, sharing their deepest concerns and aspirations. He understood this wasn't due to any special power on his part, but rather the natural consequence of being fully present without agenda or judgment. This recognition reinforced his understanding of right livelihood. That one's way of being in the world was far more important than specific occupation or role. Every interaction became an opportunity to demonstrate the possibility of living from awakened awareness. The most profound shift occurred in his relationship with time and change. Having directly experienced the eternal present moment, Ethan no longer feared death or clung to life. He saw how birth and death were simply transformations within the continuum of existence, like waves arising and dissolving in the ocean. This understanding didn't lead to detachment, but to deeper engagement with life's preciousness. Each moment became infinitely valuable, not because it would end, but because it was already complete and perfect as it was. These insights didn't make life easier or remove challenges. Rather, they transformed how Ethan related to difficulties. Obstacles became teachers, disappointments became invitations to deeper understanding, and losses revealed hidden gifts. The Eightfold Path revealed itself not as a prescription for avoiding suffering, but as a framework for embracing life in its totality. Ethan understood now that awakening wasn't about transcending human experience, but about fully inhabiting it with open eyes and an undefended heart. The return, bearing light to the world. Ethan's return to the world he had left behind was both familiar and profoundly alien. The cityscape that had once felt suffocating now appeared as a complex web of interconnected lives, each person carrying their own burdens and aspirations. As he walked through streets that seemed simultaneously unchanged and transformed, he noticed how his presence affected those around him. People who brushed past him in crowded markets would pause momentarily, their hurried steps faltering as if sensing something different in the air. Strangers on park benches would catch his gaze and smile, their faces softening with an unspoken recognition of shared humanity. The integration of his awakened understanding into daily life proved both simpler and more challenging than he had anticipated. Simple acts, buying groceries, waiting in line at the post office, riding public transportation, became opportunities to demonstrate the principles he had embodied. When a cashier snapped at him during a busy morning rush, instead of reacting defensively, Ethan responded with genuine concern, asking if there was anything he could do to help. This small act of compassion created a ripple effect as other customers began treating each other with increased patience and kindness. He realized that right action wasn't about grand gestures, but about infusing ordinary moments with awakened presence. His former workplace, a marketing firm where he had once climbed the corporate ladder, became a laboratory for applying right livelihood. Returning not as an employee but as a consultant, Ethan helped transform the company culture from within. He introduced mindfulness practices during meetings, encouraged honest communication over strategic posturing, and promoted projects that contributed positively to society. The changes were gradual but significant. Employees reported increased job satisfaction, clients appreciated the authenticity in business dealings, and profits actually improved as genuine value replaced manipulative marketing tactics. The impact of his journey extended beyond professional settings into the fabric of community life. Ethan began organizing weekly gatherings in public spaces, not as formal teachings, but as opportunities for people to connect authentically. These meetings attracted diverse participants, stressed executives, struggling students, curious retirees, all drawn by the palpable atmosphere of presence and acceptance. Through shared silence, simple conversations, and collaborative activities, participants discovered how the principles of the Eightfold Path could address contemporary challenges. Issues like social isolation, work-related stress, and environmental concerns found practical solutions rooted in awakened understanding. Perhaps most significantly, Ethan's presence inspired others to embark on their own journeys of discovery. Young professionals saw in him a model of success that transcended conventional metrics, while older individuals recognized the possibility of meaningful change at any stage of life. His story spread not through aggressive promotion but through the natural magnetism of transformed being. People began approaching him in cafes, on street corners, in grocery stores, sharing their struggles and seeking guidance. Rather than offering ready-made answers, Ethan helped them discover their own wisdom through attentive listening and thoughtful questioning. The broader societal impact manifested in unexpected ways. Local businesses adopted more ethical practices after observing the success of companies implementing awakened principles. Community initiatives addressing social issues gained momentum as people recognized their interconnected responsibility. Even government officials began consulting with Ethan on policy matters, seeking approaches that balanced practical needs with deeper human values. These changes weren't revolutionary, but evolutionary, like gentle rain nourishing parched earth. Through all these activities, Ethan maintained a delicate balance between engagement and detachment. He understood that true service wasn't about achieving specific outcomes, but about embodying awakened qualities in each moment. Successes didn't inflate his ego, nor did setbacks diminish his commitment. Each interaction became a fresh opportunity to demonstrate how the path of awakening could transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. As years passed, Ethan's influence continued to spread, not through organized religion or formal institutions, but through the organic growth of awakened awareness. People who had been touched by his presence carried the light into their own spheres of influence, creating a network of transformation that defied conventional boundaries. The city that had once seemed like a prison of empty pursuits gradually transformed into a living example of how ancient wisdom could address modern challenges. Streets that had vibrated with stress and competition now pulsed with a different energy, one of presence, compassion, and interconnected understanding. The Eternal Journey, a living legacy. Ethan's life stands as testament to the profound truth that the path of awakening is not a destination, but an ever-unfolding journey. His story demonstrates how the Eightfold Path serves not as rigid doctrine, but as a living framework for transformation, adaptable to each unique context while maintaining its essential integrity. Through his experiences, we witness how right understanding evolves from intellectual grasp to direct knowing, how right thought transforms from mental discipline to natural expression, and how right action becomes spontaneous wisdom in motion. Each component of the path proves both distinct and inseparable, like facets of a single jewel reflecting infinite variations of light. The legacy Ethan leaves behind transcends conventional measures of success or influence. It exists not in monuments or institutions, but in the countless lives touched by his awakened presence. In the executive who learned to lead with compassion, the teenager who discovered purpose beyond peer pressure, the elderly woman who found peace in solitude. These ripples of transformation continue spreading outward, each person becoming both recipient and transmitter of awakened awareness. The true measure of his journey lies not in what he achieved, but in how he changed the quality of being itself, demonstrating that enlightenment isn't about escaping the world, but about transforming it through presence. Looking forward, Ethan's example illuminates possibilities for future generations. His life shows how ancient wisdom can address contemporary challenges, from technological alienation to environmental crisis, by fostering deeper connection and understanding. The principles he embodied offer practical solutions to modern dilemmas, not through rejection of progress, but through integration of spiritual insight with scientific advancement, not through retreat from complexity, but through engagement with awakened awareness. His journey suggests that humanity's greatest potential lies not in transcending our nature, but in fully embracing it with wisdom and compassion. For those who follow, Ethan's path provides both inspiration and caution. It reveals that awakening requires neither renunciation of worldly life nor mastery of esoteric practices, but rather sincere commitment to presence and understanding in each moment. His struggles remind us that transformation often involves discomfort and uncertainty, That progress may appear as regression, and that true growth frequently feels like falling apart before coming together in new ways. Yet his story also affirms that every step, however halting or confused, contributes to the larger journey of collective awakening. The enduring message of Ethan's life speaks to the heart of what it means to be human. It reminds us that enlightenment isn't reserved for special individuals or distant futures, but available in each breath, each encounter, each challenge. His journey demonstrates how the Eightfold Path can guide not just personal transformation, but social evolution, ecological restoration, and cultural renewal. Through his example, we see that the path of awakening leads not away from life, but deeper into its mystery, not toward answers, but toward more profound questions, not to final resolution, but to endless discovery. As Ethan continues his journey, now indistinguishable from the world he moves through, his presence remains a living teaching. He has become what he sought, not a possessor of truth, but a manifestation of it. Not a guide pointing the way, but the way itself made visible. His life reminds us that the path of awakening isn't about becoming someone special, but about realizing the extraordinary nature of ordinary existence, about seeing clearly that which has always been present, about awakening to the truth that we are already home.